Today on the Transplant Helper, we're going to be discussing the potential out there, even the possibility of being dual listed for transplant. Basically, in a nutshell, that is to be listed at multiple transplant centers at the same time while waiting for transplant. I'm going to be answering a couple of viewers' questions about that, particularly whether or not it can increase your survival rate while cutting your wait times. If you're interested in that, go ahead and stay tuned. Hey folks, welcome to Transplant Helper again today. My name is Jim Merle, and today we're pausing again to answer yet another viewer's question. However, even though there's a specific email that goes with this, I'm going to read you in just a moment. I receive questions all the time about the potential of being dual listed. Now, if you're not exactly sure what being dual listed is, that is basically your opportunity and even your right to be listed at one or more transplant centers at the same time while you wait. And the promised hope behind this is that by being listed at multiple transplant centers, you could actually decrease your wait time, hence increasing your survival potential just in the fact that you actually might receive that organ. And it's all about really being in the right place at the right time. Now, let me go on and add to that before we go any farther, and you certainly should know this. It is your right, okay? It is your right as a potential transplant patient to be dual listed if you choose to do that. Now, the reason I have to say that is because there are many transplant centers today that are kind of in a position, I'm going to mention this on a program later, but are kind of in a position of the buck stops here, and they're not really interested in helping you to be listed at one or more transplant centers because for some reason they feel like they're in some kind of competition. Well, maybe they do think they're in a competition, but it's actually your patient right to be dual listed if you choose. And it's very likely the case in the United States, at least, that while you're going through the evaluation process, if you'll read carefully through some of those documents and stacks of documents that you're having you to read and to sign off on, one of those documents has to do with giving you your patient rights to be dual listed as you choose. Okay, so go ahead, sign that document, and understand that you're signing a document which says the hospital has to help and allow you even to be dual listed if you choose to do that. Now, many people have overlooked that, so I wanted to bring that up. But with that said, let me go ahead and read to you this email I recently received, and it's really the reason I stopped today to make this particular program. This person says, and it's Stephanie, by the way, she says, "Hey Jim, thank you so much for all your videos. I find them very helpful. Thank you for watching. I was recently listed for heart transplant, and while being listed, another patient suggested that I look into being dual listed in order to help improve my chances while cutting my wait times. Is that actually possible? Is that something you would suggest? I look forward to your answer and would appreciate any input you can offer." Well, again, thank you so much, Stephanie, for submitting that particular question. Again, this is something I've heard from people a number of times. They've asked questions about this. So yeah, it's high time to address this subject. Now, basically, in a nutshell, I'm going to say this. Yes, the potential for decreasing wait times while increasing your survival rates are certainly there with the dual listing. That's why you have that right as a patient to have that. That's why many go out and do this. But with that said, just because we can be listed at dual centers or multiple centers at once doesn't always mean for us it's going to be worth all that has to go into it. There's a lot of red tape, a lot of extra time even that's spent by people just trying to be dual listed. Now, certainly if you are one of those people who've been on a transplant list for years and you're not having success, yeah, being dual listed is something you've got all the time, it seems, to try for. You may as well go for it. But on the nutshell, and on the other side of that, it's not always the best idea. And the reason I say that is there are couple of factors, particularly that you have to weigh into the whole scenario before you can decide if a dual listing is right for you. And the main one has to do with familiarity. Okay, you need to be familiar with that said transplant center as best you can, at least that secondary transplant center. Let me give you an example of that. When I was growing up, when I was born for that matter, I was a congenital heart patient, not a transplant patient, but a congenital heart defect patient. And so the first thing I was introduced to as an infant really was UAB Hospital. Hence later on, UAB Transplant Center where I was transplanting. So I grew up 38 years of time I spent all my life going back and forth to UAB, getting familiar with those doctors, those nurses, all those, the whole system. I basically knew it inside and out. So when it came time for me to potentially need a heart transplant, it was easy for me to say, yes, I'm familiar with that system. I know those people. I know those doctors. I was even friends with some of them. So yes, I'm going to UAB. No questions asked. That's where I was headed. However, at the same time, even though you may or may not have that experience, many of us as transplant patients don't have that experience because basically we come ill with this failure out of the blue or from some situation that puts us in this suddenly, and we don't have that familiarity. As best you can, it's the best idea to always be as familiar as possible with your transplant center. Now, that may not be that hard to do if that's the first doctors you saw, the first ER you visited, whatever, but yet when you go into a dual listing situation, you're probably already pretty well established with one team, and now you're looking to start a whole new team or start learning new people. So just on the surface, you've got to learn new people, learn new faces, learn all of this, and even learn the way that they do things. Most transplant centers, most standards are pretty much universal, but most characters behind those standards, the people, they're not going to be universal. So you're going to have to be familiar with that one first center and then be familiar, become as familiar as possible with other centers. And that's kind of hard to do when you're having to do a balancing act on your doctor visits over here versus over there, especially if there's some distance between them. That brings me to my second point, not only familiarity, but you have to think about location, okay? Is this second listing in a location which, number one, do actually show shorter wait times. And there are some national averages, some wait times you can look up on the internet. That's not what this video is about, but you can actually go to different regions, to different areas around the country and find a little bit shorter wait times, one versus the other. For example, I'm being told right now that wait times, say in the Texas, all the way out toward California, the United States, the West, mid to far west, that the wait times for lungs out there are lower than they are, say, here in the Southeast. So regionally speaking, you might be better off being located there to receive your lung transplant than here. I don't know if that's really the case. That's just kind of a promise thing that they're showing. Nonetheless, you still have to consider, where do you live? Is the transplant center that you're attending now even in a close enough location or proximity to where you live to make it convenient? And if so, what are you doing when you maybe list somewhere else, somewhere farther away? Are you taking yourself out of the realm of being able to get there quickly and out of the realm of being able to, even receive proper care? I've got several good friends. It's unfortunate, but they ultimately had to be transplanted at centers that are hours away, even plane flights away from their homes currently, and it has made it very, very difficult, not only in the transplant itself, but even in the follow-up for the years after. It's a little bit more difficult if you're having to fly to every doctor visit, okay? So you got to watch for that. In addition to that, when it comes to location, if you're going to be dual listed, try your best, and really that's the only benefit that you can find, try your best to be listed in multiple, I should say, regions at the same time, okay? Two transplant centers that are across town from one another, I don't see any real benefit in being listed at both. Now, certainly one may have better care than the other, so you may want to choose one or the other. But if those are in the same location, basically the same part of the country, the same region, they're going to be being offered the same exact organs at the same time. So there's not going to be any benefit there that I can see in that. And I know people right now who are trying to attempt to be listed in multiple transplant centers that are in the same region, and there's just not a lot of benefit. For example, here again for me, UAB is the main transplant hospital in Alabama. I'm about an hour from it. But if you look on the other side, you go to the east, I can be at least at Emory Hospital or Piedmont Hospital in Atlanta, Georgia in about an hour and a half, and I could have been listed there. So dual listed at UAB and say Emory. But there's not a lot of benefit to such because they're in the same region. They share the same region. They're being offered the same organs at the same time. So check out the location. Now, if you live somewhere along one of those regional lines where, I don't know exactly where that would be for you, but if you can be a hop, skip, and a jump from, say, region 3 and then be in region 4 in a couple of hours, yeah, there may be tremendous benefit to that because a location wise, you're receiving the benefit of each different region. But let me add to that before we go any farther, and I just want to be clear about this. When push comes to shove, okay, here's the honest truth. Don't be fooled by the people who are telling you differently. When push comes to shove, if an organ comes available and it is your match, it's for you, and you're the one who's sick enough to receive it, you're going to get it, okay? My heart came from Oklahoma. It came basically out of a trauma center in, I think, Tulsa, Oklahoma. Not in my region, not even close to my region, but yet, because I was the patient on the list with the highest risk factor at the time, and because it was the best match, it was not needed in that region where Oklahoma is. It was flown by airplane over to my region and given to me. So I got the gift of life outside of region without moving, without having to deal with a different team or anything. So check out the location. So think about whether you can or should, and then think about both familiarity and think about location. Then the last one here, I'm really going to be expanding on in a program coming up in the next week or so. I don't know exactly when I'll sit down to do it, but it has to do with the potential for jeopardizing what you already have, okay? A lot of transplant centers, and it's very unfortunate, but this is true. A lot of transplant centers, or maybe you should blame it on the individual doctors, kind of have an attitude or a mindset that the buck stops here, okay? So as soon as you start talking to them about dual listing or second opinions or whatever, as soon as you say, hey, I'd like to leave here for just a week or so and go over here and be evaluated for transplant and try to be dual listed, they might catch an attitude about that. They might get to a place where they're not really interested in helping you. And before long, you could actually jeopardize what you already have going at Transplant Center A, okay? So make sure that it's something you're willing to jeopardize. Now, should it be jeopardized? No. Again, it's a basic patient right. You dig through your paperwork, you find that document. If you have to, you flash that back in your doctor's face and remind them it's your right as a patient, and it's their responsibility to support you in that as far as they can. At the same time, it doesn't mean that they will, okay? So you could potentially be, by being dual listed, maybe jeopardizing, because of characters and opinions, could be jeopardizing your possibilities at the first transplant center while you're over here being evaluated at the second. And again, I wish that wasn't the case, but it is. So we have to give that consideration. If this program has helped you out anyway, I hope and pray that you go ahead and give me a big thumbs up on the video. Just encourage me to keep making videos like this. The thumbs ups and thumbs down basically tell me what you need, what you want. At the same time, you know what? I'm trying to put out content to help as many as I possibly can. I'm here every day of the week to answer your questions, and especially during these times on these videos, both on Tuesdays and Thursdays, Lord willing, around 4 p.m. to put out these videos to hopefully advocate, educate, and motivate you as a transplant patient. Let me remind you again, if you are someone who's been dual listed, or maybe you're just considering it, if you know anything about it for that matter, go ahead and comment below this video, give your thoughts on this, and you can share it with the whole Transplant Helper community and maybe help someone else out, as well as the fact, since you're already here on YouTube, there'll be a couple of videos pop up here on the side of the screen. I hope you'll be willing to check out. You're here anyway, just keep watching, and maybe you'll learn from that. But until next time, please stay stronger, friends.